recording the meeting. Okay, great. And we should vote maybe as soon as we can if we need to vote on it. Oh, minutes.
On the dates, on the minutes.
Yeah, on the dates. Okay. So go ahead, Pablo. You
Oh.
can start.
Pablo Garcia, I'm a Brooklyn SWAB member on academic research in the Organic Industry Committee and the Legislative Committee.
I'm Rhonda Kaiser. I'm the chair of the Brooklyn SWAB and
Should probably pass the microphone.
oh yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Hi, Katie Yo. This is my first meeting. I'm hoping to volunteer and be involved.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Frederick Phillips. I am a master composter and a climate activist.
Hi, I'm Matt Savello, Chair of the Manhattan SWAB.
Hi, Robert Snaffer, BK SWAB member, Imani Garden Compost Steward.
Hi, I'm Ezra Kenrick. I am an environmental studies college student and interning this summer to research compost siting.
I'm Lacey Tauber. I'm the legislative director here at Borough Hall.
Hi, I'm Michael Reeser, a member of the SWAB, work for Paint Care. We recycle paint.
Great. Okay, so thanks everybody for coming. We're very excited to welcome our guest who will be speaking. Lonnie Portis is with WEACT, and you can all read this in your bio. Lonnie, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit more, but we know that WEACT for Environmental Justice has done a lot to ensure that communities who suffer the brunt of environmental justice their voices are being heard and advocating for just policies and practices. So please add anything else you want to add, Lonnie, but without further ado, please give a start.
Great. Thank you so much. Glad to be here. I'm so honored you guys asked me to speak about this. I'm Lonnie. I also go by LJ. If you hear that, that's also me. I'm the New York City Policy and Advocacy Manager here at WEACT for Environmental Justice. Basically, I handle all the city policy portfolio and the work that goes on with City Council and other city agencies. WEACT has done some work in the past with Northern Manhattan as kind of in general, Northern Manhattan is kind of where we do kind of like our place-based and community efforts are normally East West Central Harlem, Washington Heights, Marble Hill, Inwood as well. But we do also obviously city policies affect the entire city. We also do state policy work, and we have a federal office in DC. We've done some work in the past relating to waste before, and I've been in WEACT for I'm going on 3.5 years. It feels like much shorter than that, but this particular space is there's a lot going on here. So it always feels like I have been doing this much longer than I have at WEACT, but WEACT in the past before my time has done some work with waste and pesticides and sanitation and those kind of things as well, but kind of died down a little bit on that work in that piece, and it has been invigorated once I got here because of my interest in some of the waste kind of work that goes on, but also with the creation and the passing of the Zero Waste Act at New York City level. So that's when I kind of got really involved. And WEACT has a climate justice working group that works on a variety of projects, whether it be decarbonization projects or kind of like land use pieces. We also included a zero waste subcommittee. So I have now been leading that group there, mostly focused on education in Northern Manhattan, kind of, rethinking, our waste system as it's our third largest source of emissions here in New York City. So little brief messiness about me. I'm sure there's probably more details somewhere written, but those are not as interesting for some people as about my past and everything like that. But if it's okay, I can go ahead and just kind of kick off. I have like a presentation and a slide deck if that's okay with everyone. Feel good to move on. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go off camera while I'm sharing my screen and going through the slides, just because I do have a lot of notes and I don't have the dual monitor system going on right now. I wish I could be there in person with you guys, but my schedule would not allow me to get to Brooklyn fast enough to kind of join you guys. But I'm going to start this presentation. And if everyone can give me either a thumbs up or what I can't see, that you guys can see the screen itself once it starts loading. Okay, cool. Perfect. I saw some thumbs up, I saw hands up. Again, I'm going to go off camera temporarily just because I got a lot of notes everywhere and I don't want to be looking all distracted for you guys, but the main pieces are here. So yeah, I want to go ahead and start off by saying that I'm kind of here to talk a little bit about the idea of anaerobic digestion, more specifically co-digestion, and how it relates to environmental justice. I know you guys have probably heard a lot about what's going on with community composting and its funding, but then also at the same time, what's going on with National Grid and Newtown Creek and what's going on there. So it's a very timely kind of discussion to have as the city actually really starts to think about its emissions from its waste. And also just thinking about getting to kind of a zero waste emissions goal and thinking about environmental and climate justice kind of at the foundation of the work that they're doing at the city level. Quickly about We Act, we've been around since 1988. I've been finding ways to make sure that the communities of color and low-income communities can join and participate in the environmental justice movement by being a part of kind of environmental planning and decision-making overall. And we're still doing a wide range of work across multiple kind of sectors here. Waste is just one of them, as far as like building decarbonization, transportation, what else do we have? The other lead and toxins and healthy homes as well. So we cover a lot here, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about co-digestion and waste in this one. Just two quick disclaimers here. I just want to make sure everyone knows that I am not a technical expert on kind of anaerobic digestion or co-digestion system, meaning some of those nitty-gritty details of how these systems work and operate. I am not a technical expert, so I can't really provide much in terms of those details, but I'm always free to point people in the direction that they need to go in if they need someone who has a little bit more technical expertise in that way. Also, I'm thinking about this in the space of the urban context, specifically in New York City. There are lots of different other applications and understandings of how these systems work, whether it be farmland or in other parts, but I'm more focused on the kind of the urban impact, as particularly talked about, again, like New York City. And then next disclaimer is that WEAC does not have a formal public position on anaerobic digestion and co-digestion, even though you will gather from my presentation that we are definitely heavily leaning towards a very specific way of thinking about it. But it is a nuanced kind of issue for us, but we do plan on having something, or it'd be my responsibility if I'm honest. So the really truly developing that formal kind of public position. But I have read that I do believe Brooklyn SWAB does have a strong position of not being necessarily for, and definitely understood why, and can go in those reasons why shortly. But I just wanted to point those disclaimers out there. So real quick, I know a lot of this is probably just, I'm going to probably read through some of these things just because I know you guys have probably heard it before and you understand what's going on, but kind of the organics journey in New York City kind of be looked at in three different ways. How we collect our organic waste, how we process it, and then what it's used for. So we have the collection aspect of it, which are, drop-off sites, micro-hauling is included in there, the smart composting bins, the new mandatory curbside composting program, and then processing it, right? We're actually community compost sites. We have the Staten Island facility, and we have the Newtown Creek, which is like, these are kind of like the three main ones that we're looking at when we're talking about New York City. And obviously there's soil enrichment and there's biosolids and biogas. And today we're kind of just going to focus on organics and co-digestion and that process. And so basically looking at what the smart bins are being used for partially. And so same with the curbside composting program being processed at Newtown Creek, and mostly the kind of end products there are the biosolids, the biogas. What else? Just real quick, anaerobic digestion, kind of in co-digestion. I will probably use these terms interchangeably, so don't get mad at me if you're someone who is a stickler for that. I know that those are sometimes, people get frustrated when you use one or the other, but I'm going to use them interchangeably, probably throughout this presentation. So anaerobic digestion is just a process that generates a biogas, mostly of methane, which is a horrible greenhouse gas, but can be used as a source of energy, so for heating and electricity generation. And then in co-digestion kind of refers to a form of anaerobic digestion where simultaneously you're using multiple organic waste in one digester, which can be seen mostly through how Newtown Creek facility operates. I know probably are all relatively familiar with this process, but I will just kind of, let this slide and it speaks for itself. Basically, all of our organic waste. I love the the image of the toilet to kind of give you that idea. The toilet and kind of our food scraps and other organic waste are put all together, sent to Newtown Creek in some way, shape, or form. It's processed there. So 500 tons of food waste mixed with kind of 310 million gallons of wastewater each day, all treated. The idea is that two major things come out of it: the biosolids, which they have saying going into fertilizer, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then you have biogas, which a lot of people talk about mostly going into national grid system that then heats what they say is, potentially over 5,000 homes in New York City. I guess homes and businesses, depending on the makeup of the building itself. So that's just kind of like the process that I think you guys are mostly familiar with in terms of this existing and some of this trials and tribulations that have happened since its inception. It was very, very late. I think it's been over a decade this has been talked about. It has gone online, but there has been some issues with getting it online, working properly and at full efficiency. But before we kind of get into some of those details there, I did kind of want to go over two aspects that really relate to the concept of anaerobic and digestion and co-digestion. Two are greenwashing and what we call false solutions, or we have a campaign called The Wrong Direction. So greenwashing, I think a lot of you may be familiar with. So basically just kind of activities that make people believe that a company is doing something to protect the environment more than it actually is. So when you see kind of literally just actual things being written in green, if you look at that bottom right quadrant there for greenwashing, it's the plastic bottle is less plastic, right? So it's green, it's like, oh, we're environmentally friendly now, but you're still producing plastic, which is horrible. And at the end of the day, we don't need kind of those single-use plastics in those plastic bottles and the harm that they cause. So there's always ways to greenwash or make something seem like it's eco-friendly or not, even though it could be created by and developed and distributed by fossil fuel and polluting industries as well. Another aspect of it here that's just going to really kind of come and play in here is our what we call false solutions. So see, these are energy sources that increase pollution burden, expand fossil fuel reliance on infrastructure, or even exacerbate some of the health risks that we see when it comes to energy production and the climate crisis. And these are often energy sources that are produced, developed, and lobbied for by fossil fuel industries and polluting industries to keep their infrastructure going and keep their job and what they do alive, unfortunately. Some of those things are considered nuclear, carbon capture, renewable natural gas, which is kind of where we kind of fit in here when it comes to talking about co-digestion and environment. What am I saying? Co-digestion and anaerobic digestion. Also, incineration or waste to energy is another thing as well. Not a solution there. And then the rainbow of hydrogen, whether they be green hydrogen, purple hydrogen, gray hydrogen, there's a lot of different colors there for that. But these, again, are considered false solutions, mostly by a lot of environmental justice organizations. There is some nuance for a lot of these as well. Again, some of these are very, very nuanced as far as like applications, when it's appropriate, when it's not. So I just wanted to kind of put that in there and frame that as anaerobic digestion, co-digestion here in New York City is kind of being greenwashed and is more or less becoming more and more proven to be a false solution for the problems that we have going on. I will say that, you know, anaerobic digestion is still a component of our municipal system, kind of like our recycling system, our waste system, and that it does ensure that excess energy can be extracted from organic materials and used in for a secondary benefit, which are the biosolids and the biogas, what they're, you know, what's claimed. An idyllic system would be implemented after other waste reduction and prevention initiatives have been put in place. So that's kind of the idea there, is that this is kind of the last thing you do in a city that's as large as New York City, that has a lot of waste that it needs to handle, that we're going through all of these other things. And then this is kind of like the last thing we do as an alternative to landfill or incineration altogether. So want to talk a little bit about what environmental justice is. I always like to put this in here so that we can make service stay grounded and what we're talking about in the basis of this kind of presentation. And I'm going to read this straight off of the slide because I think this definition is just perfect as is and really doesn't need much context or explaining. So environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all persons, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, policies, and activities, and other distribution of environmental benefits. So as we kind of go through and we think about co-digestion, Newtown Creek, and what's going on in the city system, we also think about what does environmental justice look like when we're talking about this, and what are some of the environmental injustices that may occur in this process space. All right. So I think the meat of what we're going to talk about today, I think here is kind of what are the actual environmental concerns here. You know, I didn't go over kind of any of the details of how some of this works. Again, I'm not necessarily a technician when it comes to these systems, but overall, we've got some problems of like why this is an environmental issue, justice issue and concern. So kind of one of the main byproducts of doing a co-digestion is the biogas, which is what's most, I guess you could say, use the term lucrative in this space right now in terms of using it to not only power the actual plant itself, but the excess can be used to be put back into national grid systems, specifically to heat homes as kind of like basically a form of energy. And then also kind of those profits allegedly were supposed to be split between the city and national grid. But although biogas comes from what we call organic materials, it's not necessarily good for the environment. So it's still flammable, toxic, and potentially explosive. And creating a market for biogas increases the incentives for the production of waste. A lot of people don't think about it that way as well, but I think it's always important to point out that if we're creating incentives to create these spaces, we're also just saying that create more trash, create more garbage, create more, you know, kind of waste, because we have this system that has been put in place. So it actually does increase the production of waste as well. And we also know that anaerobic digesters are known to leak between 2 to 3% of their gas during production. And if just 2.8% of that methane leaks from an anaerobic digester during production, this is worse for the climate than coal. So it's not good if it's not working 100% efficiently, that we can actually be causing more harm than good. And digesters are only partially effective at reducing the odors, the pathogens, and greenhouse gas emissions from sewage or animal waste. They're not able to make any chemical contaminants go away. So this becomes a really important aspect to the biosolids, or what's being used. As I saw in that first image where they talked about using things for fertilizer. Obviously, depending on the waste that's being processed, this could mean that the digested itself can't actually be used for fertilizer and maybe need to be landfill because of the concerns for health and safety. So that includes things about like pharmaceuticals and other toxins. And most of what's going into the Newtown Creek plant and kind of co-digestion right now, there is absolutely no way that that it should be used at all for kind of fertilizer for soil at all. And according to DEP, which I don't know if this is actually completely accurate, they say that 80% of the solids are used beneficially, meaning and includes converted into nutrient-rich fertilizer for soil. And then the rest gets landfill. But I can't imagine 80% actually being viable and usable for fertilizer because of the reasons, because of all of the things that are going into the actual digester itself to create this biosolid itself. Yeah. And so other types of, similar to other types of industries, obviously digesters are usually being cited in predominantly low-income communities or communities of color with very little community engagement. I think that's the bigger piece there, is that there's a lot less community engagement when they're building out these systems. And then on top of that, you also have once these systems kind of come online, and if there are issues and problems, a lot of community members or neighboring communities really don't quite understand what's going on, or never can get quite clear answers of what's happening, when is it working, when is it not working, and so that creates a bigger problem. Another piece here that is a concern is actually just the cost of all of this, right? So when you think about kind of environmental justice and climate justice, we also want to think about how we're spending our money to solve some of these problems or do mitigation efforts or adaptations. And, as of February 2021, and I don't think there's been an updated figure for this, Newtown Creek has cost $47.8 million. So to let that sink in. So to get that all up and running, and I think that was from an initial estimate of like $14 million. So it has ballooned a lot. So a lot of money has been spent, almost $50 million spent on this as a solution or as a way to reduce emissions kind of from the waste sector overall. And this becomes a problem because right now there is a lack of proof of concept. Right now there's persistent breakdowns in Newtown Creek, so only online for about 54% of the time, meaning the other times when it's not working efficiently, we're getting those methanes linked, we're getting the flare-offs, we're getting all of those things that are harmful to the environment and to our health, obviously, can cause a lot of health issues and concerns when it comes to air quality. And in some places, not sure, I don't think here as much as the issue is like leakage into groundwater, but it's persistently not working right now as we started to try to get things online. So we have to take that into account, as well as like kind of a cost, not only economic cost, but also like a health impact as well. And there's also right now, the National Grid unfortunately has kind of a proposal here that, to basically pay for Newtown Creek, but then also to expand this type of facilities elsewhere in the city, and increasing people's bills in order to pay for that. $13.2 million would subsidize some of the capital costs. New York City would be responsible. So that means that ratepayers would actually be funding kind of this almost, something that's not truly beneficial or has not realized its true benefits and hasn't had really, again, a proof of concept. So this is also a big problem in environmental justice issue as well, because we already know that low-income communities are already burdened when it comes to other energy bills, whether it be electricity, some heating as well, and adding this to it. And there's also a whole thing going on with the water rental rates and everything happening as well. So adding this is not, it's not good. It's not good for anyone who's low income, who now has to basically pay for kind of a system that is harming their environment and their community even more, or potentially, I guess I could say, but it is. And another concern too is that basically under the Inflation Reduction Act, developers can get a tax credit of up to 30% on any biogas facilities that were built before 2025. And so we're running up on that date. And so there is a rush to almost produce these there's not really, again, proper oversight and not much community engagement going on in the process. And they just really wanted to get these tax credits and these benefits from there. And there's also more money and incentives as well to build out some of these these facilities. And this becomes a big issue in New York City just because as we enter another phase or a new phase of New York City's composting program with mandatory curbside composting, it's set to rely heavily on anaerobic digestion and the creation of biogas. And unfortunately, that comes at the expense of community composting because it's being viewed as kind of redundant or unnecessary. If we have curbside composting, why do we need community composting? And I don't think I need to go into all of the benefits and the amazingness that is community composting from both the environmental, climate, justice perspective. It is the best option when it comes to handling kind of our organic waste and food scraps as well. And that comes from this idea that the new composting program is expected to pay for itself because it's supposed to reduce cost of disposing waste outside of the city. We spend about $500 million to move waste from out of state to incinerators and landfills, going out to Ohio, to South Carolina, to nearby and incinerators in Jersey. And this is obviously an environmental justice issue because those are probably cited in areas of communities of color and low income communities as well. So our current waste system is funding environmental injustice and environmental racism in other places throughout the country. And so a piece of why we need to reduce where we're sending and how we're disposing of our waste is really important. And because New York City's local capacity to process food waste is not yet in place, much of the compost is being turned into much of the organic waste is being turned into biogas instead of actual healthy, usable compost for soil enrichment and fertilizer. What else? And something else here that I think it's important to know that currently all of the smart bin compost that is processed outside of Staten Island is being sent to the anaerobic digesters in Newtown Creek. So 75% of this being turned into biogas and 25% into fertilizer, which again is concerning for the reasons that I just said. And if New York City's residential organic waste were to be composted, it would be enough to cover 25% of cities' landscaped areas and an inch of compost every year. So if we actually were to do actual composting, as opposed to this, we would have that added benefit there of actually having compost. But again, because the fertilizer contains sewage, it can't really repeatedly be applied to the same area of land that we're talking about there for those benefits of composting. I wanted to bring this up to just kind of a little bit of like what that WE ACT is a part of the rate case going on and actively going against kind of Newtown Creek's facility itself. So we've been working with Earth Justice on this Newtown Creek facility. It's being funded with ratepayer dollars, and a big sticking point in this current rate case. So this facility will likely to continue to be funded, but we've been using every legal recourse available to us to basically document the failure of the company due to due diligence on the project and planning to file, and there's a possibility of planning to file an Article 78 action as a next step, which is basically a lawsuit mainly used to challenge an action or inaction by agencies of New York State and local governments. So the rate cases are ongoing right now, and I'm not privy to all the details. I know what rate cases are very private in lots of ways, so there's only so much that I can share because there's only so much that I know because I'm not actually working on that specifically, but this is being looked at as well, kind of as we have this, that National Grid wants to use more of this, wants to increase their capacity and even increase their footprint when it comes to anaerobic and digestion and co-digestion. So I'm gonna go here for a little bit. There's a few more slides, but I think one of the things that we want to look at here is like, where do we kind of go from here? And then we can have some questions and kind of like a more open dialogue. And I can do my best to kind of answer some of those questions. But where do we go from here? So there's a lot going on in this space. And I think one of our biggest concerns and our main thing is right now, we just really need to fight to reinstate the $11 million to community composting. I think that is kind of like one of our main goals here, is because we want to make sure that that program stays a part of New York City's kind of overall organics waste infrastructure and how we're handling it and processing it. And we also want to fight to make sure that there's more state and federal funding that's going towards community composting, and that the city is doing everything it's possible to get any of those funds that actually exist to expand those programs, because as you see, competing with kind of federal dollars for things like anaerobic digestion. There's also the possibility of legislation and kind of using city council as a tool as well to kind of think this through. So there's definitely always a need for a city council oversight hearing. I think on this very specific topic, I think really hearing kind of updated numbers, data, what the issues are, what the projections are, how does this all fit into the larger system and plan waste system for New York City, I think is going to be very valuable. I'm not sure when that oversight hearing is going to happen, but we have talked to a few people and having a little bit more of a comprehensive focus on kind of anaerobic digestion and co-digestion specifically. Also, there's legislation to protect and expand community composting that's currently out by Councilmember Cindy Nurse. If anyone's interested in that, I can drop the link to that bill if you don't read it. And there's also been conversation that talks about actually banning like land application of the sludge and sludge derived products. So some of those bio products that I talked about that are not necessarily safe or healthy for our soils, and we don't want to put that back into our food system as well. We already know what's going on a lot with microplastics and just other kind of toxins that, again, that anaerobic digestion cannot actually remove from the byproduct itself. And also, another thing that we need to be looking out for is we need the proof of concept. We can't expand any of this co-digestion infrastructure. There is a reality that this already exists in Eton Creek, so there's no, there's not gonna be a fight to tear it down or remove it. As of right now, it's still kind of in its early stages. It's not working properly, only 54% of the time. So we don't believe that there should be any expansion of any kind of co-digestion infrastructure without proving that it actually is benefiting in a way that makes sense, and actually thinking about and realizing the full kind of holistic like community cost and benefits to continuing this program or this system. And also, we don't want any cost passed on to ratepayers at all to continue to fund something that is not proven to work. And then another thing is really thinking about a really well-designed system that prioritize local, low emission, high quality organics processing, and advocating for organic collection and processing system that's climate and environmentally just, right? We really want to take all of those bases that we've talked about and really apply it to this and saying like, and when we're designing a system for organics processing, how is it actually benefiting communities? Is it benefiting climate? How is it doing it? How does it compare? I think part of that goes into unfortunately, some of the greenwashing of this technology under these systems is that it's better than. And that's also a form of greenwashing when you're just comparing something bad to something worse. Whereas as opposed to comparing it to other things like community compost system, if we were to invest the same amount of money, if we were to spend $50 million into community composting and processing, I wonder what that would look like and how much that would capture, as opposed to if we were investing $50 million into these projects as well. And I always put at the bottom of most of the things that I give a presentation that we can't forget about NYCHA. In this situation, I know that they may not necessarily apply directly when it comes to the anaerobic digestion system, but when it comes to just having a well-designed system overall for organics processing, we can't forget our public housing campuses as well that are often left out of these conversations and of these kind of solutions that we see better fit. And again, consistently being told that the whole idea behind anaerobic digestion and co-digestion is that, by capturing our byproducts and recovering their value, you're able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create renewable energy in our backyard, and reducing long haul trucking are like the three benefits that they keep coming up with, but none of these have seemed to really truly materialize because it's not functioning at 100%. One quick plug here for the podcast that I co-host at WEAC called Uptown Chats. We're actually going to do a mini series this summer about kind of what we call wrong direction and false solution. We'll talk a little bit about liquefied natural gas, the different forms of hydrogen, and also looking at carbon capture as well. We probably won't get into too many details about anaerobic digestion, but it does fit in a lot with some of the natural gas conversation that we'll have as well. So I definitely, that will kick off, I think on Monday, we will have our first episode there, just kind of setting the stage for everything. But I encourage you guys to listen if you're interested in kind of this false solutions conversation as well. Always got to give my shameless plug for the podcast as I'm the co-host. Also, if you're interested in getting involved with more with WEAC, all the information there, visit that, so that way you can stay in touch and involved with all the work that we'll be doing there. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. That was a lot of talking at, and I'm gonna turn my camera back on. And then I think from there, I probably missed a couple of things that I wanted to highlight throughout, but I wanted to have a time for a Q&A/conversation or discussion that's kind of relatively open about anything that you heard or any kind of questions that maybe I can help answer if it comes to the environmental justice aspect and impacts of anaerobic and co-digestion. And again, like I said before, we don't have a full, like a public formal position on this, but as you can see, based on what I told you, our position is looking much as like we're opposing any more additional build out of kind of these systems, given that there are other alternatives that are more favorable and much more environmentally just than anaerobic digestion like Newtown Creek and expanding that. So I will stop there. Hopefully I didn't take up too much time or took up enough time for everyone, and feel free to ask questions or discussion topics, reactions, or comments.
Lonnie, I'll just jump in. We did have a question from Mark in the chat, saying that some people involved in this issue would say that since the Newtown creek digesters are already handling food waste and they are not going away, why not add organic food waste into the system also? And Mark's question to you is, what do you think of that? And what is the city planning for investment in future anaerobic digesters?
That first part, let me grasp it again. Sorry, I'm just looking for it as well.
No, no problem.
Can you repeat that
It's
first part?
Yeah, sure. It's the second to last thing in the chat right now. It's just that some people involved in this issue would say that, in quotes, since the Newtown Creek digesters are already handling sewage waste and they are not going away, why not add organic food waste into the system also? And Mark is wondering, what do you think of that? And then what is the city planning for investment in future anaerobic digesters?
Yeah, I think that was kind of, one of the things that I touched on a little bit, and I can elaborate a little bit more, is that, again, if we're already doing this, why not if it has the capacity? That's definitely, understandable, but it's also what the actual outputs themselves are. Are they actually beneficial, and are they really doing true emissions reduction? Are they really having the benefits that they say they are by going through this? I will say that, we are a massive city, and if we were to have our goal of having absolutely nothing going to landfills, that, anaerobic digestion and co-digestion is probably going to be a part of that conversation or that larger picture regardless. And I'm not saying that necessarily doesn't have to be the case, just saying that right now, it's really having a hard time proving the concept of, when we already know that there are programs that work very efficiently for much cheaper, and does not, include the continuation of kind of the fossil fuel industry, which is most of this is all fueled by them and National Grid, just trying to make sure that they can stay alive and keep their infrastructure alive as we try to not try, but as we actively move to renewable energy sources, they're trying to find any way or possible to be a part of this, process by calling something green or something along those lines.
Thank you.
Mark, I don't know if I answered your question at all, or if there's more that you had to that.
No, I think that's good. But the second part was, I wonder if, is the city planning on new and more anaerobic digesters down the road as a way to deal with our organic waste? I mean, and
Yeah.
Kendall just said there's some upgrades going on. He mentioned in the chat. But aside from upgrades, is this a priority for the city to have more anaerobic digesters?
I think right now, when it comes to the city, it's hard to kind of get a pulse on what this administration is. I mean, obviously they're supporting it because, they've already spent a lot of money has already been spent. So DEP, Rit Agarwalo, who's the commissioner, will talk a lot about the positives of this. Again, National Grid is proposing to some form of expansion. I can't remember the exact, let's see if I can find it in my notes here, but I think there was like one treatment plan in Long Island or Nassau County. And then I think another one in the city that they were thinking of expanding this out to, but I don't think I have that with me right now in my notes. But if anyone else does, they can definitely put that in there. But that's kind of basically the sentiment that we're getting so far, that the city is pretty much saying, like, we need to make this work. As far as expansion itself, I haven't really heard too much in terms of a lot of elected officials at the city council level are a little hesitant to expanding this kind of particular systems or infrastructure.
Thank you.
Is there a formal report on this whole project that, if you want to learn more about it, or that they've done looking at, this and the alternatives to it? Do you know?
You know what, Pamela, that was Pamela, right? That was speaking. That's all there.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was actually looking for something along this. I don't think there has been anything mandated at all. This was part of this kind of process of being a little haphazard. I mean, despite it taking as long as it did, I do not believe there has been any like legislation or bill that says that there is a reporting requirement. So I'm sure that National Grid probably has numbers, and then we know how often it's operating, how much it's not. That has come off of some hearings that have happened in the past. That's where you get the 54% kind of number, knowing that it operated. I think that was last year's number, that it operated at 54%. And then also, it's also pretty visible too. I think you can actually see the flaring off, which shows you that it's offline and that it's not actually working. But I don't think there's any strict reporting guidelines or mandates when it comes to this project. And so that was one thing that was really interesting. So a lot of it is articles. I know Samantha Maldonado at the city has been really good at keeping track and keeping up with this. And kind of a lot of it's through reporting. And then sometimes you'll get some type of maybe like a press release or something from DEP, but there's no actual like space where you can go where there's other like mandated reports that have to be put out there, which is another piece that could go into this as well, as like actually just having a legislative mandate about this, saying that, every year you have to give a report out and it has to include these aspects of what's going on. But that would be very useful if that existed, but I could not find anything. It requires a lot more digging and probably trying to talk to DEP a lot more. And then obviously National Grid being, a company that's probably shrouded in lots of, opaque documents, and trying to figure that out. That was a very long answer for saying, no, I don't have any real reporting.
Hi, this is Michael. I have a question. So, I mean, traditional wastewater treatment plants, right, have been around for some time, since since we stopped just dumping sewage directly into the ocean. Aren't anaerobic digesters like Newtown Creek better, preferable to those open air, systems for managing sewage?
Yeah, I think that was a question, was like, isn't it preferable to kind of open air management of sewage and organic waste? Is that correct? I mean,
I'm asking
technically, yes.
specifically about sewage, right, which is really what the plant was built for, was to manage,
Mhm.
you know, what goes down the toilet.
Mhm.
Right.
I think that, well, I don't know, Lonnie, if you want to speak to that.
I was gonna say quickly, when it comes to that, there is a slight difference between like what we flush down the toilet and like how we handle like food scraps and organic waste that is not that. And so it can only speak to so much in terms of you know, the beneficial aspect of the other side of that equation versus the how we handle like kind of our food and organic waste there. So I don't want to give any type of response that I'm not too sure about, but go ahead. Someone else
Well,
has something.
I mean, I was just gonna say the same thing that you did, was it's just a matter, I think the question is whether we're gonna add all of the organics, 80% of the organics that we're collecting now from curbside to that process. Is that a really good use of that 80% of that organics?
Right, so co-digestion is really the issue, not anaerobic digestion, because I think that having, you know, enclosing the digestion of sewage waste isn't a negative thing.
Right.
However, co-digesting food waste is the part that is questionable.
Right, I mean, agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, we're not asking for it not to be digested, the food waste. I think. I mean, the poo-poo,
Right.
right,
Yeah.
right. And also, can I say it, Pablo? Pablo mentioned to me like something interesting that we have to be on the alert for.
Well, the one thing is that they have carbon credits. And if you take, if you get carbon credits from composting and all that, is that gonna be, progressing the anaerobic digestion? It depends who gets certified to get carbon credits.
Yeah, and the carbon credit conversation is a lot more complex and not something that I necessarily work on specific, but it's also carbon credits and those kind of carbon trading schemes are also not viewed favorably in the environmental justice world as well. Because at the end of the day, you're still emitting, you're still polluting.
Well, it
So
allows
carbon
other
credits and
people
those
to
things.
pollute. Yeah.
So that's a little bit more complicated there in terms of when you're talking about the carbon credit piece that I can't speak to. I wish I did have a colleague on who could speak to a little bit more, but that is a very good point as well.
So I think there, we need to make a distinction between, first of all, carbon credits and carbon offsets. Carbon credits are issued by governments, and offsets can be agreements between private parties. For the environmental justice world, I mean, I can envision a world where if we compost our food scraps, the carbon savings is in excess of what you would have with anaerobic digestion, I think. And you have a beneficial product and process at the end of that experience, which could be monetized to enrich the program through carbon offsets. And so that's not something we should throw that away overnight. I think there's another issue that we need to be really cognizant of, which is that to get the extra boost in methane production from what Newtown Creek does, it really does need a substantial amount of organics. So to power the plant itself, you're not going to get the same amount of methane production just by taking out the nitrogen inputs from the organics. So they need it. That's never going to, I don't think that's ever going to go away, but we shouldn't, as Lonnie has mentioned, or someone else mentioned, we don't need to be taking 80% of our organics that we need to produce compost into rich urban soils and essentially flush it down and mix it with a variety of other chemicals that you are not capable of taking out of the material at the end of the day, including the gas. So I mean, there are two components to what comes out of the co-digestion process. One is the sludge, which has traditionally been used as fertilizer. However, since the introduction of chemicals that are very difficult to remove from the environment, if not impossible, I don't care what everyone else is telling us, they're almost impossible to remove. Once they're in the environment, that becomes a problem as to what to do with the sludge. It becomes a hazardous product sometimes. So these are things that we have to be aware of. These are decisions that as residents of this city, I believe we need to voice our opinion on and come up with an appropriate balance that enriches our lives and not damages our health or our environment. So that's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Audrey,
Hi, hi Lonnie, thank you so much. Hi everyone at SWAB, thank you again. These are really great sessions. I had a question because you mentioned, Lonnie, like how expensive the production of that energy is. And we're kind of locked into that system. We're trying to figure out what to do and make the best of the situation. How do we, from an environmental justice perspective, how do we rectify the situation that we're kind of like locked into a potentially damaging, polluting system when it doesn't operate at its full capacity? And it's also super expensive, taking away the funds that could go toward more healthful, community beneficial systems and services. So we're defunding our city and also dumping a bunch of money into producing energy for like a very small number of homes. So just,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
I was gonna
thanks.
say, this is the great dilemma that I have to think about all the time. And I think, the first part of that is it exists. Like there's nothing else, can't make it go away and get our money back. So at this point, I think right now, the idea is that it just needs to operate at full capacity as it can to reap the benefit that it says that it's supposed to have, whether it's the 5,000 homes, which I think right now it's like only like 1,000, it's like a fraction of those homes that they promised. And, we're not getting the full benefits of the reduction of the emission. So like it needs to operate correctly and fully. You know, and not, obviously it has a max capacity that it can handle in terms of organic waste. But it just needs to be operating as efficiently as possible for us to really kind of reap any of the benefits that that come from it. There are benefits that do come from having this, as opposed to, again, other things, but not as favorable. But I think that's kind of where we are. I think that's the the only real answer I can give you there is just really staying on top of making sure that they understand that this needs to operate efficiently, and it needs to operate in the way that was promised to the community and advocates. Because what can happen is, if no one's pressing them or no one's staying up on top of them, is that it could just keep operating at 50-some% of what it's supposed to do. And that just does what National Grid wants it to do. It's just like, well, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. As long as we keep our infrastructure going, then, that's all that really matters to them.
except that, you want to say?
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Lonnie. It's been a terrific presentation. I have two environmental justice concerns that I haven't really heard raised elsewhere. One is that the communities that are near this processing center are going to be getting a whole additional truck traffic from all of the garbage, all the food waste coming in. And then I would expect those same communities will be being the closest to the plant that's generating that methane. We're going to be getting the methane, assuming the network is set up in a reasonable way. They'll be, because they're closest to that facility, they'll be getting that gas that's coming out of the facility, which I would have less faith in the quality of that gas versus whatever's produced in a more commercial setting. So getting it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the issues was the siting, obviously, of these kind of plants. You know, that's one reason why we definitely don't want any more expansion of these kind of systems, because we see what happens already is where they placed them. There wasn't much in terms of community input. The truck question is very interesting because I get different responses depending on where I look and who I ask in terms of whether truck traffic will increase or decrease. And that's supposed to be one of the benefits, is that it's supposed to decrease the truck traffic, or at least long haul truck traffic. But I'm sure that that statement is being kind of manipulated in some way, shape, or form. But yes, that's an interesting piece to me too as well. I've never can quite get a straight answer. Again, this is why reporting would be great, to really understand, is it actually doing the thing that it's supposed to be doing, and it's supposed to be reducing truck traffic, which is one of the things that they keep saying is a benefit. But there is that concern there too. And yes, I do know, again, we act mostly kind of focuses on neighborhoods that are within Northern Manhattan, but we do kind of keep in touch with kind of Newtown Creek Alliance and keep a pulse on like what is being discussed there in their neighborhoods in terms of their concerns as well. So we definitely hear all of the complaints and the concerns there as well, but we definitely also respect the organizations and people who are advocating in that space, and we're always willing to be a part of that advocacy efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we want to gonna get Beth, but
I was just gonna quickly say, I would assume that it would increase truck traffic to the Newtown Creek plant, but decrease truck traffic to other
Right.
stations.
right, so again,
Yeah.
environment. That's right. It's not waste equity that
Yeah,
you
I
guys.
mean, when we passed waste equity, it got about 120 trips per day off the streets in North Brooklyn. I have not, speaking to this thing about there not being reporting, I don't know how many trucks per day are going from Varick to the wastewater treatment plant or coming into Varick with organics for that matter. I would like to know that very much.
Yeah, and just to say one quick thing about infrastructure, that it's prolonging the fossil fuel infrastructure. But in the same time, it's having problems, like that's the problem with why they flare it off, isn't it? Because of the surfactants, it's corroding the infrastructure.
It hasn't reached the quality, like you said, the quality that you need in the homes.
Right,
So they don't have the quality, they'll just turn it off.
right, but I also understood that it was the surfactants that were in it, which degraded the quality, but also corroded the pipes. So it's degrading the infrastructure that they are hoping to prolong. Oops.
Exactly. And that was one of the concerns too, is that I heard that as well, that there's some headaches to this for National Grid. But the train has way left the station, so I don't think they can really go back on the kind of agreement that they have. But that's part of the problem. Is the concern is now like, well, if this is corroding our pipes faster, then we need to put in new, or now we need to increase, and we're going to make you pay for it so that we can make these newer pipes that are going to last another 50 years, 100 years of the infrastructure. So that's a big concern as well, is them using that kind of as an excuse to upgrade their infrastructure.
Right. Okay, Beth, I'm sorry. Thanks for being patient.
That's okay, thank you. And I know we're running up against time. Thanks so much for all of this, Lonnie. I have my own question, and then there's a couple of questions in the chat that I want to make sure we get to as well, if we can, with time for. My question is, I'm wondering what or what is out there in terms of this idea of beneficial use, and are there official rankings of it? I mean, I know Kendall knows some answers on this as well, but when we talk about this idea of beneficial use of the biosolids, and DEP is claiming, these different percentages, and there's different classes, do we really know, first of all, like, where is it going? And secondly, are there studies, are there rankings or a spectrum of like, what does beneficial really mean, and where do these things fall in terms of that?
Yeah, I think at the surface level, and I don't I think Matthew's I think is maybe still there, might actually have more to add as far as like, where it's going, but the term beneficial is just, it's really blanketed. It's not like a controlled term here. It's just like saying that it's a use that is not uh it's no longer not contributing to, I guess, the actual emissions itself is how it's kind of framed. So beneficial use is a very loose term. I don't think it's really worth much. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts on that, but in terms of like where is it going? Is it being used? DEP saying that they're using 80% of it. I don't think that's possible. And I don't know where they're using it. And I think they should stop. Because there's, the PFAS, the bioplastic, the fact that there's toxin, like we just talked about. And I don't know if that's going outside of the city as well, and then being put back into our food process, which is already a whole nother conversation I'm sure everyone can have. And farming and things like that, where it's being negative. But I'm not sure if anyone else has any more knowledge on terms of like where that actual quote unquote beneficial use, those biosolids in the sludge is actually going.
I think someone within our group oil for the where our biosolids are currently going, which we still haven't gone through all that data line. I think we need to finish that work. I will say that some of it's going to agricultural use. Yes, it is. How much I think at this point?
I know like there's a couple different resources that have looked at this. I think both like the 2023 state solid waste management plan did a study on this, and then there was also something that I think they kind of budgeting kind of dependency. But it's like around 70-80% ends up going to landfills, and then about after 20, and that just gets dumped into landfills. Of that leftover 20, they can be like beneficial applications as like cover for landfills, so that would be cheap. And then also agriculture application. There is, I mean, a lot of the reason why it goes to landfills rather than and then also that it can be composted. So biosolids, like after they're produced and biogas is produced as a product, biosolids can be composted, but again, the compost of that creates is not particularly high quality, and that itself is also a carbon producing process. A lot of the reason why the biosolids don't end up making it out of the landfill is because they produce a quality of, they would produce a quality of agricultural application that would not be sufficient for PA emissions of soil conservation. So.
But would they meet the criteria of landscaping?
So I think there's like, I can't remember exactly, but there's I think like 8 classifications according to EPA for soil. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure there's a range. Some that might be possibly, could be applied to, I think like rain gardens, or flood protection.
Highway?
Yeah, exactly. But I think that logistically is quite difficult for the DSNY to orchestrate. So most of it just, and 70-80% ends up in landfills, and that's been increasing actually. So it was around like 50%, I think in 2017, and it's reached much higher since then.
Okay. Well, we are in a time, we've gone very far over our time, but because it's a fascinating subject, and Lonnie, you've been really excellent at speaking. I think Audrey her hand is still up from earlier. That's my guess. Okay, sorry.
We did have one other question in the chat, but there were a few others we didn't get to too, but I know it's with time we might not, we can also stop.
Oh yeah, we should continue this maybe next month. Thank you so much, Lonnie, for everything, for your patience and discussion afterwards, and thanks to everybody for everything you contributed to the conversation. Thank you, and
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it again. As I find out more and as we do more, again, I handle a lot of the policy work. I'll definitely be sure to share. I know I'm connected with quite a few folks who are various SWABs, definitely Manhattan and Brooklyn. I've got some connections there. So as we do things legislatively and whatnot, I definitely will keep in touch and see what's going on. But I think one of the things that are on top after this, all this budget stuff that we have on is really kind of understanding that oversight and reporting, I think is really important that could be relatively legislated relatively quickly. You know, kind of reporting bills, not usually a huge fan of, but I feel like in these cases, there's a lot of information that we need to have regularly to really understand if this is actually working the way they said they're supposed to work. So again, I appreciate you guys having me. And maybe there'll be a time when I come back and there's a huge update that I can provide with everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all the work that you do with WEAC. Thanks a lot. And we'll listen to your podcast.
Yes, definitely check it out. It's going to be great. Talk about fall solutions.
Okay.
All right, everyone.
All right, great.
Thank
Thank you. You're welcome to stay and don't feel bad if you're gonna leave. Thanks. So,
Thanks, Lonnie.
are we gonna say something, Beth? Awesome. So, now let's move on to Lacey's update from the Borough President's Office.
Hello, everyone. It has been a big day for trash. All trash all day. This morning, the city council had their oversight hearing on commercial waste zones and also interesting plan 6. Many people here in the chat were there. The borough president had the opportunity both to say some comments and to ask the administration some questions, which was really great. He's focused very much on commercial waste zones as it was his bill in the council. You hear me talk about it, I feel like every meeting. We care deeply about seeing the implementation go well. There are many concerns with how it has been rolled out so far, including an emphasis on price that I would say was unexpected and sort of against the intent, the spirit of the law. Some carters who were awarded who have very problematic histories and practices that is sort of again against the spirit of the law, and those I think were a couple of the main things that were discussed. We're going to work with Councilmember Bray's office to get sanitation to send us many of the follow-ups that they committed to today. And I also, on a different note, want to introduce you to Ezra, who you already heard from, who's joining our office as an intern for the summer, to work with me and with the SWAB. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're going to do?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, in the agenda, I think it was 696, as I even mentioned. So it was a part of the hearing earlier today. And it is introduced legislation to build that would require DSNY to build 180,000 tons of compost capacity in each borough. And so I am looking at logistically how that would work, and trying to research possible sites for the composting, as well as produce research that would explain the benefits and feasibility.
So basically today, sanitation said they didn't think the bill was going to work, but we're gonna work on showing them how it can. And as you can see, we've already learned a lot, so we're very excited. And I think that's it for me.
Yay, thank you. Okay, thanks a lot. That was great. That was a lot to process. As we're processing, let's do the Save Our Compost update. Please, Sherry.
I'm here.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. So for Save Our Compost, May was a busy month. We had a couple of hearings. Actually, I was not able to listen in on the one today, so thank you, Lacey, for that. That update. There was a budget hearing earlier in May. There was a couple of rallies. Still, I don't think anything has changed in the actual, part of what's going on at the city level, in that community composting is not in the mayor's budget. and the negotiations are still going on. So the Save Our Compost group is doing a lot of work to try to talk with city council members and especially folks on the budget negotiating team. So there'll be, I think there's another rally coming up. I need to find out. We have a meeting tomorrow. So I don't know that the next rally has been finalized. And the next sort of outreach push and see where we can go from here as we're waiting. So that's kind of my update, unless anyone else has other updates. I don't think there's anything new from Big Reuse. They're still, you know, set to be evicted at the end of June. So yeah. Lacey, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. You reminded me, thank you. So
Yep.
another thing from my update that I meant to say is that we have a formal role in the budget response, but we choose to do it, I think, a little differently. And so for our comments on the executive budget, what we usually do is just a big letter to the speaker that says, please support, you know, these various things. And we definitely included community composting in that letter, which we sent today. And we're also going to send it out to all the members of the Brooklyn delegation. I will say we source priorities partially from them, and at least a couple people mentioned community composting in their top 3. So I feel like there's really good support happening at the council, but it certainly didn't hurt to underline it, which we did.
Great, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and I'll share anything via email. I mean, I would invite like Beth, and I can't see who's all on immediately here, but if anyone else has anything to add, I tried to just do a very top level because there's a lot going on. Grow NYC is still losing funding for their programs. So like Stop and Swap, I think the last one's coming up this weekend. Zero Waste Schools. I don't know if anyone's had a chance connected with them lately, but they're also you know, set to lose their funding. And the community compost, the drop-offs that Grow NYC had at farmers markets, that were the drop-offs that were run by Grow NYC have ended in May. So those folks, the majority of those folks are now laid off from what I understand. So that is the sad update, but we're still fighting. And as Lacey said, we've heard a lot of that sort of work from council members that it's you know in their top priorities, and we're pushing to make them aware. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Reusable NYC, Uli, are there updates?
Yeah, I went to the meeting this month. There's no update on the Choose to Reuse bill. That's kind of the big update. They did have someone come in from Reusable Solutions, a gentleman named Ben Kogan, talking about like a 6-pack can carrier reuse program that he wanted to set up, which was, I guess, interesting. And then there was someone from Good Planet, which is like a zero waste film shooting company, and they were looking for groups that accept things like art, clothing, and food. So I can paste that information in the chat. That might be something you'll be interested in. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Executive committee, we should, does anybody move to approve the final minutes that Debbie did for May? I think we have a quorum still. Michael moves that we approve. Any second? Bastille and Pablo, second and third. Thank you. Should we vote all in favor of approving the minutes for May? Tell me when you're done.
It's looking like yes.
Okay,
We have
anybody opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Yay, we approved the minutes. In addition, our most recent quarterly meeting with the sanitation commissioner was postponed. It's gonna happen this Friday. And we will update you as we always do orally over at the next meeting. Legislative committee? Do you need to vote on the dates too? Oh, yeah. We just want to make sure, usually we vote on whether we take off August or July. And usually we take off 1 month during the summer. So does anybody, let's say whoever wants to take off August, raise your hand first. That's what we usually take off. Not to tip the scales anyway.
Thank you. Forgot about that.
Yes, looks like the majority have voted for August.
Okay, anybody want to take off July? Okay, so we're taking off August. I mean, we're gonna take off August. Okay, great. Now, July, usually the 4th of July, is an issue. And we usually have to move the July meeting, but July 1st is the first Monday of the month. July 8th is the second Monday of the month, but it seems to come after the July holiday. So maybe we don't need to vote to move the meeting. I guess we could say this, does anybody want to move the meeting, which is supposed to be July 1st, to July 8th?
July 1st, Monday.
Yeah, July 1st is a Monday, and that's when it's set up. We're set up to meet, but usually it's around the first Monday is usually around the holiday weekend. But does anybody need to move it? So our next meeting, we don't even need to vote if no one needs to move it. Then our next meeting will be July 1st. And after that, September, whatever. Okay, great. Let's move on to legislative committee updates. Is that, do we do everything?
So yeah, so we met last month. We talked a bit about the hearing, the budget hearing. We did put together some testimony that utilized things that we had already written, so it wasn't it didn't diverge from any opinion that had already been approved. We read that during the hearing. And then we just talked about a few other things that we were thinking about writing position papers on. So for instance, the waste characterization study, as well as perhaps the compost and parks bill. And this month we'll talk a little bit more about what we'll focus on in the upcoming month.
And I'll just add to that. We hustled and got together some testimony for today's hearing. Thanks to everyone for voting quickly on that. Thanks to everyone who met to draft it. And that's it. Thanks. Outreach.
Thank you. We did meet in May and we had, the majority of the meeting was some folks from SWAB, Joyce, Sharon, and Allison did their from kitchen to compost presentation. So we could hear how another SWAB engages their local community boards, because that's one of the things we want to outreach to again and work on building that back up. I think that was also worked on with WEACT, right? Folks that are more familiar, looking Mary Ellen, Allison. I think it was kind of a joint presentation pulled together by WEACT and the Manhattan SWAB folks. So we went through that and talked a good number, a little bit extra following that meeting about the presentation. One of the things I had mentioned last time was possibly having smaller subcommittees of this, of the outreach committee, schools being one of them and community boards being another one, along with social media. So, we had a little bit of a discussion about the schools update and hadn't had a chance to meet separately, but since that meeting, some folks, and I don't know who was able to meet with Miriam Shemwell, who some will recall is also a friend of the SWAB and worked at Grow NYC, amongst other things. But Miriam is now the waste operations manager for the Office of Energy and Sustainability at NYC Public Schools. So she had reached out, and there's been ongoing back and forth emails going on trying to connect with each other. So reaching out to collaborate with the SWAB. So I don't know if anyone on this call wants to do a little highlight about that meeting. I just saw some notes, so it's kind of ongoing discussion, including a monthly setup meeting, but I don't know. Does anyone hear Beth?
I can talk a little bit too, and Allison, you can jump in if you want, because I know Allison was on that call, as was Betty, who I don't see here. And I'm talking off the top of my head, so Allison, jump in if I'm missing anything. But yes, we met with Miriam, mostly just talked about ways that we can support, and talked about some end of year things that the schools team or that the DOE is doing. We talked a lot about actually the push for teachers to bring things to materials for the arts, and that they're having some special collection days there. And we talked about ways to get the word out, and different ideas around that to just expand support, expand PTA support, also in those efforts. And we are going to meet more regularly, and we're working on time. So if people are interested in joining those meetings, they should reach out. I guess, I don't know if you want to field those, Sherry, or one of us to field those. If there's anyone but I don't think we haven't decided on a time for our next meeting yet. I think there's a new doodle poll that I'm reminding myself that I need to respond to.
I'm going to put my email in the chat if anyone's interested in joining the outreach or the school's work specifically, because we had talked about having that meeting and then following up after that meeting to see how best to move forward. Those were the main things. Other than the next community board focus is going to be likely the statement of needs, because that's kind of their next big thing that comes due. So we talked a little bit about that, but they also take July and August off. So we'll be working around availability of not only community members, but actually folks at community board offices to connect with. So, and maybe doing some presentations to them and doing some more focused outreach if the team has capacity. So I think that's our general update.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Your committee's growing. Thank you, by having babies. Okay, so the events committee, Liz, are you?
Yep. Hi, I'm here.
Hi.
There's not much of an update. I think Debbie, Herdan, and I had discussed meeting, perhaps doing a meetup at the Kingland Flowers rooftop on a Friday. There's open hours. I think it's like 5 to 8 p.m. on Fridays on June 21st and June 28th. So we potentially discussed doing like a SWAB meetup, but just seeing Uli's comment in the chat about like the flaring of the gas going on when she was there last time. Perhaps that's not the best
gas masks.
Yeah, so okay, you'd still go. Okay, that's good to know, Uli. I guess it just depends if they're flaring gas there at that time or not. So I can send out a poll to check whether the 21st of June or the 28th of June would work better for folks, that we can have a decent turnout.
Great, that's great, thank you. And the night, Susan left. Were you at the last night committee meeting? Any updates?
I can't remember.
Oh, I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, talk about night shift.
Okay, great, okay, thanks, that's great. Okay, so the NYCHA recycling committee updates, the next one of those is Thursday, June 6th, the next NYCHA recycling committee. Okay, now we're going to open floor. Just to say quickly, the Packaging Reduction Recycling Infrastructure Act, there are a bunch of phone call relays happening if anybody wants to join, and Katie's gonna say something, make an announcement too, because something's going on at BK Rot. Our constituents, Katie, if you want to just unmute, you can go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, we are having a garden party fundraiser at BK Roth this Friday from 6 to 8 p.m. It's at No Wastelands Community Garden, which is 1309 DeKalb Avenue in Brooklyn. It is a 21 plus event for this fundraiser, but we'll have more throughout the summer that'll be family friendly. But we are asking for ticketed attendance. If you give $30 for the ticket, you'll get a drink included in that, and I'll put the RSVP in the chat for everyone. But it'll be fun. Excited to see people out there and really get to talk about how we can continue to fundraise and advocate for community composting, because BK Rot, like everyone else, has been hit pretty hard since the change to curbside composting and with the navigation of the new commercial waste zones for micro haulers legislation. So it's definitely a fun environment to navigate for small organizations, but I hope we can get some great turnout and see everyone in person. And sorry I couldn't be there. I know Dior's normally here, normally planning to chime in, but I'm glad I could attend today and listen to Lonnie's presentation also. It was great.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming. And also the link is in the agenda as well, if you want to RSVP.
Oh, great. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I just realized the upcoming SWAB meetings are not updated. I can try to do that, send that out tomorrow. Does anybody have anything else they want to add? We were running behind, but now look at us. Now a big old talk.
Does anyone access trash days?
What is that? You mentioned that.
It was something that Trish puts out where you can get all the. I haven't seen it, that's why I asked if anyone has access.
I never heard of it.
And she's very data driven, is what I heard. Which I think is gonna be a future problem, not now, I mean, like 10 years from now. Because it's the 5G networks, everybody's collecting data. So now people are buying farmland out in Ohio and Virginia, have these big data centers. Collect all that data, a lot of energy.
Right.
I mean, right now it's not a problem, but I could see like Rich is following the Comstead mode. And if everybody starts following that, that's gonna be a future problem. Next generation. But I haven't seen transport.
That's the tool you can use to track your garbage truck and when it's coming.
Supposedly, yeah, they're supposed to all have, it came up with, they all have GPS now.
Oh.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, but the main point is that she's adequate.
Who was the person who did it?
No, no, Tish.
It's the DSNY.
Yes.
Oh,
It's copycat of something,
okay.
which was successful in law enforcement.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting. Right, she's from. Anybody, anything else? The earliest we are.
I'd like to know who did all that research for the Manhattan SWAB, all the chemical, they had a whole list of all these chemical.
Oh, and we wrote that last year, a year ago. And it came from the EPA.
Yeah, EPA is listed the
Yeah,
780 or 680.
because not all of them, a lot of them break down.
Yeah, no, they're not. We didn't say they're all forever chemicals. Some of them are.
Oh, yeah, the chlorinated ones, and the chlorinated, those, the long chains are hard to break down.
But it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get in biosolids.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Right.
And the ones that are considered harmless, you don't about them.
Right. If they'll find out that they're not.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Is there a composting committee?
A composting committee? Well, the organics committee, I work. Yeah.
So there's a report. It's on a report. The organics committee reported already.
Oh, right. Oh my gosh, you're right. Allison, Vondra left, but is Allison still here?
Oh, I am.
Allison, I'm so sorry.
Well, a lot of it was covered. We do, the organics committee will be meeting on Monday for anyone who would love to join. We'd love to see you. Second Monday of the month, I guess, at 5:30. I wanted to say that while we were meeting, I saw like a daily news article that the mayor restored 127 million to school budget. So I'm wondering if that's the beginning of some new releases. So hopefully organics will be next. I thought it was interesting today at the hearing that Jessica Tisch opposed the 696 bill. So that'll be an interesting meeting that you'll have with her this week, and hopefully we can all learn more about that at the organics committee next week. I guess, I mean, there's probably going to be some more rallies for Save Our Compost budgets. I don't think we have confirmed dates yet. But I always ask what observations you guys see in Brooklyn, and if anybody needs help getting your buildings to participate in the curbside program, please don't hesitate to contact me. Because we're preparing for Manhattan, but you guys are already in the midst of it.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh.
Did she speak to why she opposes 696?
I think she said, it would be like prohibitively expensive.
Funny.
Her three categories were like logistical, like that it just wasn't feasible physically to build the sites. It would take up too much space. The second problem was the cost. That building it would be very expensive, but a lot of the numbers that she used were not being completed, not relative to sending it to everyone suggestion. And then the timeline, she just was thought that the timeline was unrealistic, and was citing environmental impact assessment and
Right.
state DEC permits, and the third one was
She also said, like, if there aren't going to be any bids because there's nobody to do it. Right.
It's about the RFP that they have out for compost facilities, like in the region.
Oh.
She couldn't say whether they had any responses or not because it's an open RFP right now.
it wasn't just composting, it's just diversifying again.
Right, that's right.
But she said she hoped that it would balance, greater balance between composting and fly.
So what stage is the rollout of citywide composting curbside collection?
Do you want somebody else to say that? We're at,
I know Brooklyn is already out, and I think Staten Island, I don't,
Queens is out.
yeah.
Bronx
Bronx is
rolled out.
happily done by-
Manhattan is happening in October. And Bronx already rolled out, or it's? Oh, right, together. It's fun.
Is there enforcement piece to
So enforcement isn't expected to start until spring or summer of 2025. Most of the warnings at the beginning.
Oh, something interesting she said today, actually, that I intend to follow up on with Councilmember Bray's team, although they're probably already working on it, is that she really wants to see a bill passed to require source separation for all commercial businesses. So that would be good, and we should work on that. Yeah. She said she had draft legislation in hand.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so it seems like kind of a slam dunk.
So the next step is what?
I guess for the council to take a look at that legislation and get it going through the process.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to note, tie it in without the some wrong areas of this. There is a bill right now, I don't know what, maybe got the implications of this, but that exempts smaller businesses from the enforcement of, even the ones that are already required to source separate the enforcement of violations of the source separation.
Is it a bill? It's just one that's been.
I think it's.
Oh. I have not been paying enough attention to the commercial organic. As we're still, yeah. Good to know.
Does SWAB have a letter for them?
Right. I mean, I was thinking that. I was just thinking that question. Yeah, we should come together with a letter, all small. And also, let's not put aside the issue that Lacey brought up about the restaurant sheds. Oh, yes, my favorite topic. Yeah. Because of the crazy law that's coming up, like they're gonna have to. Yes, the expiration of the like grandfathering, I guess, happens in October. So like by the end of October, these sheds are coming down. Yeah.
That's
on
on
our
our
So-
agenda.
What?
It's on our agenda, right?
Okay, great. So, yeah.
So,
Yeah, what are we gonna do about it? So-
oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, yeah, thank. There's it's a there's a mulching pilot program.
Of construction work?
It's not construction, but it's parks work.
Oh.
But it is in the, allowed to see the. Economy plan. Some organizations. It's also tied with training. I think people previously were training. Understand that process of action. And then it's recycled.
Greenwood Cemetery is doing a similar thing too. They have some kind of, because they have a lot of trees, and sometimes their trees come down. And they're doing some kind of like reuse with like wood reclamation program. That's pretty cool. And isn't that with veterans or something? I think I don't remember. Yeah. Okay. Okay, everyone's kind of falling off. Let's appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming from far away and from near, everybody who joined us. So we'll see you on July 1st. All right, goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Yeah, you have a suggestion?